When people talk about World War II survival, they focus on food shortages, bomb shelters, and hidden supplies. What rarely gets discussed is the silent killer that took lives faster than hunger or cold, bad air. Across Europe and Asia, millions of civilians and soldiers spent days, weeks, and sometimes even months underground, in bunkers, cellars, tunnels, and shelters. Fresh air was never guaranteed. Carbon dioxide build-up, smoke from heaters, dampness and disease could turn a shelter into a death trap without a single bomb falling. Yet many World War II shelters stayed livable for years, not because of modern technology, but because of ingenious ventilation systems designed with basic materials and a deep understanding of airflow. In this video, we're uncovering 11 World War II ventilation systems that kept underground shelters breathable, dry, and survivable. And more importantly, how those same principles still apply to modern bunkers, basements, storm shelters, and off-grid spaces today. Natural stack ventilation was used to move air without electricity. One of the most reliable systems used during the war relied on nothing more than heat and gravity. Shelters were built with two vertical shafts, one low and one high. Warm air naturally rose and escaped through the upper shaft, pulling fresh air in through the lower intake. This stack effect required no fans and could run indefinitely. Today, the same principle can be applied by installing passive vents at different heights in a basement or shelter, ensuring warm, stale air always has a path out while cooler air is drawn in. Hand-crank ventilation fans kept air moving during blackouts. In military bunkers and civilian shelters alike, hand-powered fans were common. These devices use simple gearing and paddle blades to force air through ducting when external airflow failed. In prolonged sieges or blackout conditions, someone would be assigned to crank the fan periodically. For modern preparedness, manual ventilation fans remain a critical backup for shelters where power cannot be guaranteed, especially in airtight spaces. Filtered intake vents protected shelters from smoke and gas. Many World War II shelters included layered filtration at air intakes using charcoal, sand, cloth, or even straw. These materials trapped soot, dust, and chemical particles while still allowing airflow. While crude compared to modern filters, they were remarkably effective. Today's survivalists can adapt this concept using layered DIY filter boxes combining activated carbon, furnace filters, and washable cloth as a low-cost air purification system. Periscope-style ventilation shafts avoided direct blast pressure. To prevent explosions from forcing debris or pressure waves into shelters, some air shafts were built with angled or zigzag designs. These bends allowed airflow while blocking shock waves and falling rubble. You know, this concept is still used in hardened structures today. When you're building or retrofitting an underground space, angled intake pipes really do reduce vulnerability, all without sacrificing ventilation. Floor-level intakes, well, they prevented carbon dioxide build-up. WWII engineers knew that carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen. So many shelters placed intake vents near the floor and exhaust vents up by the ceiling. This setup encouraged proper circulation and, importantly, prevented suffocation during long occupancy. These days, it's pretty straightforward. Just place air inlets low and exhaust points high to mimic this proven airflow pattern. Moisture control systems, you see, were essential in keeping mold and illness at bay. Damp air was indeed one of the greatest threats underground. During World War II, shelters often relied on gravel drainage layers, clay walls, and strategically placed vents near moisture sources to keep that pesky humidity manageable. Ventilation wasn't just about oxygen, oh no, it was about maintaining dryness as well. In today's world, pairing ventilation with moisture barriers and drainage can dramatically increase the long-term habitability of underground spaces. Shared ventilation corridors, interestingly enough, served entire neighbourhoods. In cities like London and Berlin, entire blocks would share these underground air corridors, which were connected to multiple shelters. These systems helped to equalize airflow and reduce those stagnant pockets that could be quite troublesome. While, modern building codes do differ quite a bit, the concept of shared air pathways is still really relevant in multi-room shelters or bunker complexes. Isolated rooms can otherwise trap stale air, which is definitely something you want to avoid. Camouflage surface vents? Well, they avoided detection and sabotage, right? Many civilian shelters actually disguised their air outlets as fence posts, drains, or even rubble piles. This clever approach prevented enemies from locating shelters just by visible airflow or smoke. Modern survival planning honestly still benefits from the same kind of thinking. Vent placement should always balance airflow with discretion, especially in scenarios involving civil unrest or security concerns. Smoke baffles protected shelters using wood-burning heat. Heating underground often meant fire, and, fire meant smoke. During the war, ventilation systems frequently used smoke baffles and separate flues to isolate combustion gases from breathing air. Today, separating heating exhaust from fresh air intake is still absolutely critical when using wood stoves or emergency heaters in confined spaces. Redundant vents ensured survival if one path failed. One of the most overlooked lessons from WWII shelters is redundancy. Most well-designed shelters had multiple air paths in case one collapsed. So modern shelters should, follow the same rule. Having at least 2 independent ventilation routes really does dramatically increase survival odds if there's ever structural damage or a blockage. Routine airflow discipline, that's what kept those systems functional. Ventilation only worked because people, day in and day out, maintained it. Filters were cleaned, fans got rotated, and vents were checked daily. WWII survivors, they truly understood that air systems were just as important as food. For modern users, scheduled inspection and testing of ventilation systems is, absolutely essential, especially in spaces that remain unused for long periods. Just a few closing thoughts. Old air systems, timeless lessons. WWII ventilation systems were built under pressure, scarcity and, constant threat, yet many remained functional for decades. They succeeded not because of advanced technology, but because of sound engineering principles and, honestly, disciplined use. Whether you're designing a shelter, upgrading a basement, or studying historical survival systems, these ventilation strategies remain as relevant now as they were 80 years ago. If this deep dive into forgotten WWII survival engineering helped you rethink underground living, subscribe to the channel for more historically grounded survival knowledge and share this video with fellow history buffs and preparedness-minded friends. The past solved problems we still face today, and breathing is the one problem you can never afford to ignore.